All right. Hello and welcome everyone to yet another webinar. This is the series, this is the third webinar in our webinar series. And today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic that is about how do we set up a blue-green deployment on Kubernetes using a technology or a tool called as Argo Rollouts. And this is part of the Argo's ecosystem. Along with Argo CD, there is Argo Rollouts as well. And we will get started with this, in a minute. Before that, let me just welcome everyone. I see Ajay, Guru, Hari, Harish, Manisha, Michelle, Roshan, Sachin, Sony. So welcome everyone. Welcome to this webinar. And, let's get started with our agenda here. Let me first share my screen here. All right, there we go. So, okay, just to get started with some context setting, we'll go on for about an hour, probably less than that, in case if you're done with the demonstration earlier. I have set up most of the things here so that we can proceed on things very quickly. And what are we going to talk about today includes how do we roll out things in Kubernetes by default? What are the strategies available with Kubernetes by default? What are the things which are not available? And that is where we'll bring in the Argo rollouts. And I will demonstrate to you how to set up Argo rollouts. What is the concept of this controllers and CRDs and so on? And then how do we design a strategy? I'm going to demonstrate a very simple example of the blue-green strategy. So why do we need blue-green strategies? How does it work? And how do we implement it with Kubernetes is what we will demonstrate. Towards the end of it, I'll also talk about certain new things which we are working on in terms of the School of DevOps platform. And if you are a member, what's new? If you're not a member, how do you get started? I'll just brief you on that as well towards the end of this session. Now, let's get started with talking about the rollouts in general and the release strategies as well. So how many release strategies do you know about, or can you name a few release strategies that you know of? If you know if you know about any of the release strategies that you've worked with, heard of, you can put it in the chat. Those of you who are part of the Zoom meeting, we're also live streaming it on YouTube. I'm not watching the YouTube chat though. So rolling update, yes. So there is a rolling update strategy which is built into Kubernetes, Arun. So anyone else, any other release strategies? Come on. I'm pretty sure that's, some of you have at least heard of or maybe seen uh, more than that, right? So more than that, let's say the rolling update is also called as a zero downtime deployment, by the way. Anything else that you've heard of in terms of how do we deploy things and how do we release it to the customers, right? It's all about how do we release things to the customers. And it's not only about deployment. You can deploy stuff, keep it there in the production, but use a feature flag to set it on and off and so on. Blue-green, of course, we're going to talk about that. So blue-green is the strategy, Michelle. So apart from that, we have canaries, we have A/B testing, we have recreate or, traditional restart kind of environment, and we shut down everything, push updates. There is a downtime in between, and then we bring up everything and that's the typical recreate or restart kind of a strategy that we have with downtime. Now, when you talk about Kubernetes, we are talking about mainly specifically deployments, which are very, useful controllers to run your stateless applications. And basically, if you talk about deployment, there are two different strategies deployment support, right? I'll just briefly introduce you to the deployments and show you how deployments work, also demonstrate that what is the default strategy and how does it work as well. So in case of Kubernetes, we have this concept, and I'm assuming here that most of you are aware of Kubernetes here, at least the fundamentals. If you're not, I would recommend you get started with the fundamentals of Kubernetes. We do have courses on it in terms of, if you look at the courses, Docker, Kubernetes, those are the things you can get started with as well, right? So starting with Docker and then moving on towards Kubernetes, basically. Now, talking about Kubernetes in specific, we deploy applications using pods. Pod is the unit of deployment, and pod is a way to run your containers in Kubernetes as well. And when you want to make it high available and scalable, you typically roll out or create something called as replica sets, or think about replica sets, right? Now, if you look at deployment and replica set gives you these two features where you can define a scale saying, I want these many pods, like 4 pods to be there, and it always maintains it. So it first gives you the scale, and you can change that scale to something else, like 4 to 7 to 8 to 10, whatever. And it gives you that scale, it maintains that scale. That is the role of a replica set. Even if you're using deployment, internally it uses this controller. And then it also maintains the availability, as in if it finds that if you've asked it to maintain 4, but if it finds 3, it's going to launch 1. If there are more, it will delete some. So it will only maintain the scale that you define specifically. And then when you want to go from one version to another, you typically have, this is where you need some strategy. So if you look at replica set alone, replica sets are not capable of going from one version to another. That's when you need some controller on top of that. That's where we bring in the deployment. Deployment works this way. So deployment starts with rolling out the version by internally creating a replica set. And then you define an update strategy. And this is the strategy, the release strategy that we are talking about. By default, Kubernetes deployment and what is built into Kubernetes is there are 2 different strategies which are available to you. Number 1 is called as a recreate strategy. And number 2 is the rolling update, which is also the default strategy. Now, what is the difference? So in either case, deployment internally maintains a replica set for every single revision. So let's say you deployed the first version, it will create a replica set for it. Let's call it X. When you go from version 1 to version 2, the way it will move the pods from one to other version is by creating another replica set, let's say Y. And then how do we go from this replica set to this replica set with 4 pods is where these strategies come in. If you choose recreate as a strategy, it's simple. It just brings down everything. There will be a downtime, and then it brings up everything again in the new replica set. So that is the one with the downtime, and kind of an extended downtime, you may call it, because it's going to bring down everything, and then there will be a downtime, possibly visible to the customers as well. And then it will bring up everything, and then you'll have the new version rolled out. This is the recreate strategy. The other strategy that deployment comes with is called as a rolling update. In case of rolling update, what happens is you define the batch size. And instead of, it does a batch update here. And instead of basically rolling out or stopping everything and recreating, it does that batch by batch. And that's why it is called as a rolling update. It is rolling out in batches, a few pods at a time. So it'll go from one version to another by launching or replacing few pods, and that is a batch size you can define in the deployment. And it goes batch by batch. So at any given point of time, you're going to see some pods being available at any given point of time, basically there, right? And then this is also called as a zero downtime deployment, because at any given point of time, you do not have the downtime. It will have some partial availability at the minimum. And that is also the reason why it is called as a zero downtime deployment. Now, the thing about this rolling update is there could be a situation where you may have 2 different versions running at the same time. And that is the source of a problem sometimes, where you may have an application which needs a schema change. It has breaking changes, and you cannot have 2 different versions running simultaneously. Either you have version 1 or you want to switch to version 2 completely. And that's the way you want to roll out, right? And that is the scenario which is not supported with the default Kubernetes environment. And that is when we need something like blue green and so on. Or maybe you want to test your application deployment on percentage of your client, percentage of your environment, and that's when you use something else like canary releases and so on. So how does the deployment work is what I'll show you, demonstrate to you here. And I'm not gonna go in depth into each of this configuration, but I already have the Kubernetes environment set up here, first of all. And I'm using a technology called as Kind, or a tool called as Kind, which lets you set up Kubernetes very quickly on one single node. It's a Docker node, and it basically has set up 3 containers as nodes. And it's a very interesting, easy tool to set up a multi-node kind of an environment. So when you see this environment on the right in this my visualizer, this is a tool that I use in my trainings and courses as well, called as Visualizer, and gives you sort of a visual idea about what's going on. So you see these 3 boxes are my 3 nodes. On top of that, I have green boxes, which are the containers running. And the advantage with this tool is whenever you deploy, you'll actually see what's happening on that visualizer tool. So you get an idea about what's happening, how it is rolling out, what is the batch size, and so on. So let me show you the deployment by first creating it for an application called as Vote. Right? It's a simple Python application, and I have a deployment already. And let me just show you the deployment code as well. Again, if you want to understand this code, you need to have an understanding of what the schema looks like, AKMS part. And that's when I said you need a little bit of a background on, let's say, on Kubernetes. And we define a batch size using a couple of parameters here. So, it's going to basically, what I'm saying here is roll out in a batch of 3, set up 12 replicas, roll out in a batch of 3, and wait for 20 seconds between each of the batches. Like, it's going to work like this, right? So there's a batch of 3, for example. It will roll out in a batch of 3, right? Wait for 20 seconds, and then go to the next batch, and then replace that, and then go to the next batch, and so on and so forth. So that's how it is going to roll out. And I'm just giving you a very brief overview of that. Now, let me go ahead and create this deployment and show you what all it creates internally. So when you create a deployment, it not only creates a deployment itself, which you can see in the bottom. You can see on the right-hand side here, you'll see all the pods coming up. So there are 12 pods coming up. That's when I said it's going to create 12 replicas. And then when we say rollout, it started creating, right? So all these yellow blinking lights are container being created. And once they start running, they turn to solid green box. And I'll just search, or, just focus on the pods in the question here, the application in question called as Vote, and it has been deployed. I will also expose this as a service. Kubernetes services are like load balancers, which help you connect to that application from outside the cluster, from inside the cluster. And you can see I have this version 1 running, and it is doing load balancing as well, because you can see every 3 seconds, I have a refresh plugin here running in Chrome. This page is being refreshed automatically every 3 seconds, and every 3 seconds is going to a new pod. And if you observe this last 5 bits, last 5 characters, it's pointing to one of these basically. So 8T is this, and now this one, and then it's gonna go back to this, and then probably in the next few seconds, it's gone to this one. So it is basically load balancing across this. That's my application, which is what I don't want to be down. And that's when I have this rolling update defined, where when it rolls out, and I'll show you, when it rolls out the next new version, you're going to see the application version here, which is running with the new version, which is running with the older version. You also see a deployment which has created this replica set. So deployment internally creates a replica set. Replica set, it maintains the availability and the scale. Like if you ask it to create 12 instances, it is the job of the replica set to create and maintain those. Now, what is the job of deployment then on top of this? Is deployment will maintain the replica set, it will also maintain the strategy or have the strategy, implement the strategy, and decide how to go from this version to this version, as in this replica set to the other replica set. And that is what you're going to see now when I roll out the next version, that is V2. I'll go to the same directory. All right. By the way, if you have any questions, you can bring it up, and you can unmute and speak as well. So I'm going to change the version here from, let's say, V1 to V2. And I'll also show you what happens here. Rollout status for deployment vote. Yeah, I'll trigger the rollout, and you'll see what happens. It's running in batches. A batch of 3 has just been rolled out. You can see that on message on the left. Let me zoom out. So that you can see the next batch. When it rolls out, you'll actually see that happen on the right. So every 20 seconds is going to launch or replace 3 pods. That's why it is called as a batch update or a rolling update. So it's gone from 3 to 6. You can see that now. It's gone from 3 to 6, and we'll wait for 20 more seconds for the next batch. At this point of time, I have, so you can see the deployment has created a new replica set. This is maintaining the version 2, and this is maintaining the version 1. And you see that this will start growing. It's gone from 3 to 6, then it will go to 9, and then 12. This will start shrinking. So it's moving between this replica set to this, and accordingly, you'll have those many number of pods. And now it has just rolled out a new batch. You can see that it's gone to 9 out of 12 replicas now. You saw the right-hand side, it replaced 3, and it has gone to 9. This is shrunk to 5. And you see 9 are up to date. And that's how the rolling update happens. And when that happens, you see 2 different versions. So you can see it's not down. It'll never be down here, but it will show you 2 different versions because it is rolling out in batches. And you have mix of both applications, V1 and V2, mix of both versions rather, V1 and V2. That's what we have right now. Let me trigger this one more time to show you what happens again, how deploy bin behaves. And then we'll talk about how we can extend this or change this. So V3, I'm going to apply. Start checking the status. Just rolled out the first batch of 3. See that on the right as well. It has created a new replica set, yet another replica set, which started running 3 pods. These are the older ones. This is the new one. This is V3. This is V2. There are 3 of V3s. And the next batch will get triggered anytime now. Just done. Yeah, so now I have 6 and 12. So 6 of V3s, 8 of V2s. So it's around half and half. And at this point of time, I'm going to start seeing V2, V3 both. And it'll start showing me more of V3s and less of V2s. Yeah, that's the way the rollouts happen here with deployment. Now you notice there's no downtime, but you do have different versions. Yes, so that's what is happening right now. How we are able to access the application is there is something called as a service, and service is pointing to any pod which is running with certain properties. that is this application version. And it's actually been rolled out. So almost done. Just waiting for a couple of older replicas to go away. And it's been rolled out to, let's say, version 3. Yeah, it's done. You see more of vForce now, only vForce now. And I can just start triggering v4 and yet another rollout. And this time I'll show you what's happening with the service. So there is something called as a service, which is balancing across these pods, which are running with this application. And it looks at the application, this property. So any pod with this property is going to send that traffic to this one, right? And there are now endpoints. So you'll see constantly this is getting updated now. You can also use endpoints for this application, and you'll see that this changes every time there's a new batch. Yeah, I think we are somewhere in the middle. Yeah, somewhere midway. And every time there's a new batch rolled out on the right, you are going to see the endpoints get updated. And that's how service is picking up new versions and updating itself automatically. So every time there's a new batch, you are going to see service endpoints get updated here. Might be just a blip of a second that it happens, but it definitely does happen where it starts updating. It removes about 3 changes or adds 3. And that's what has been happening all the way here, right? So it's constantly keeping track of that. So you saw just something got updated here, right? So that's how the services work. That's how the deployments work. And deployment maintains these replica sets, for historical reasons, to keep track of historical rollouts, and it supports rollbacks as well. So if you want to roll back, it's easy as well. I'm on v4 now, and if I want to roll back to v2, it is possible. You just have to say check the rollout history, and you will see there are 4 rollouts. I can also add something called as a change cause. It's called as annotation. And then I've not added it, but I can look at what went into revision, a specific revision, number 2. And let's say I can roll back to this as well using something called as undo. So there are these commands related to rollout. And I've shown you status, history. I'll use undo. Undo is for rollbacks. And this is why these replica sets are maintained, because when I say rollback, I will not have to mention the configuration. I don't have to apply the YAML code. I will just say rollout undo, deployment vote, and I can leave it as that, which will go back to the last one. Or I can say to revision is equal to number 2, and it starts rolling back. And you're going to see V2s. Now you already see that on the right. 3 replicas have gone through with V2. And it's just switching between the replica sets, really. That's what it does. If you look at it, really, it's nothing but switching between replica sets like you see here. This is the one which is maintaining V2, and that's the one it is going back to. And this is from earlier. This is about 8 minutes ago that I created this. You can see the age. And this is how the rollbacks happen. It's kind of, if you run one command, it just rolls back to the previous version from there. And it's happening with the same strategy. So it does 3 pods at a time. That's what it replaces with. And that is how it is happening. Now, throughout these rollouts and rollbacks, you don't see the application going down. You may see different versions, but you don't see the application going down. And that is why it is also called as a zero downtime deployment, right? And that's what zero downtime deployment is all about. So with Kubernetes, by default, you get this. You get either a zero downtime deployment like what we see here, or it is recreate, in which case it is kind of it will restart, stop, there'll be downtime, or it will delete, there'll be downtime, and then it will create. That's what it is. But if you don't want this, that is when, Kubernetes limitation comes in. I mean, limitation as in out of the box. Kubernetes does not offer this feature where if you want to go from one version to another without having two different versions at the same time, because you may not want that, you may not desire it, you may not be able to support it either. So in which case you want to switch to another version, but you want to minimize the downtime, because with recreate there'll be an extended downtime. And if it is a customer facing application, you don't want that. If you're doing multiple releases a day, imagine that, right? You don't want that kind of a downtime. So how do we achieve this is where the blue green releases come in. So how the blue green typically works is all of this is behind a service. So when we access this application, when I'm accessing this application here in this browser, I'm going via something called as a service. Service acts like a load balancer. And behind that, there are a set of pods maintained by this replica sets, right? And that is what it is pointing to. With rolling update, it might happen that it's pointing to the pods from this is what is happening, and it's pointing to the pods from two different versions. And that's why you see V1 and V2 both. Now, you don't want this. You want to go from one version to another, but you want to minimize the downtime as well. So how do we do that typically is using a blue-green deployment. And how we can implement it is by launching the replica set 2. Instead of doing it this way, yeah, we can create a secondary service. Or let's say, in case of Argo rollout, it's going to create something called the preview service. Let's call it as vote-bg because I want to do a blue-green deployment. Now, blue-green deployment as a release concept was created by Netflix. They created their deployment system called as Asagard, which then became Spinnaker at some point of time. And they call it as red-black release, but the concept is same. So it's a blue-green deployment is same, where let's say this is your blue release. I mean, it's just color coded, right? So you call this as a blue release. You'll call the new version as green, and then you'll switch the colors and so on, right? So what happens here is the new replica set with version 2, this is version 1, let's say. If you use blue-green, it'll launch a new version, possibly with the same amount of pods, same scale here, right? And then let's say this is version 1 in blue, and then we have version 2 in green. And this will be running in parallel, just that the users will not be pointing to that. And then you can test it if you want as a developer from outside. But this is what happens, and then it creates a preview service. It launches a new replica set with a new version, and the preview service starts pointing to it. At this point of time, if you use Argo rollouts that I'm going to demonstrate to you, you can also initiate some automated analysis. So you can run something called as automated analysis, whereas you can run some experiments like tests. You can launch the test against this preview service. This is not live. And you can analyze the results through the monitoring system in place. And then based on that, you can also make a decision whether this is going on fine, maybe wait for 5 minutes, launch the load test, run it for 15 minutes, 30 minutes also. Wait if everything is okay. Look at the monitoring data. If you see any anomalies, anything out of ordinary, you stop the release, right? You don't have to switch the live load to this one, right? At that time. Or you can, if everything is fine, here, then you would switch to this, or maybe this service will switch to point to these pods, meaning your users are gonna start seeing the version 2 at that point of time. Now, when that happens, there may be a blip of a downtime, but it's very minimal because you're just switching the configuration from one version to another. So there will be very minimal impact on your customer experience, basically. And that is the reason why you would want to use something called the blue green, which will give you sort of a best of both. It is similar to recreate, as in it's going to switch to the next version. It's not going to show two different versions. It will switch to another version, but with a very blip of a downtime, right? So it's not like a zero downtime, you can call it, but it's a very minimal downtime, or you can make it, with the retries, client retries, and whatnot, you can make it even kind of unnoticeable altogether as well, right? And that's what a concept of blue-green release is. And how do we implement it is where, since Kubernetes does not allow us to do it, we bring in another controller. And instead of using deployment, we start using that controller to roll. But it works a similar way, almost similar way. Instead of deployment, I'll have a resource called as a rollout. And that is how you extend the features of Kubernetes. So when you extend the features of Kubernetes, what do? So what you do is inside your Kubernetes environment, you start running some additional controllers. Right? And then controllers extend the features of Kubernetes by offering certain custom resources. So what are the resources? So everything in Kubernetes is a resource. Everything that you can control over API, and writing the YAML, like I showed you, is a resource. You can get a list of all these resources by looking at kubectl API resources, and you will see everything that you deploy in Kubernetes, everything that you create in Kubernetes, including deployments, including services, including pods, including even your network administrative stuff, right? Including cron jobs, including ingresses, including network policies, right? So everything in Kubernetes is an API resource. And the way you extend the features of, in fact, the node that you have, which is your VM or anything, is represented as a YAML object called as a node in Kubernetes, right? So everything is a API resource, essentially. So you'll probably see the nodes as well. So nodes are also resources. You have other controllers like stateful sets. You have network policies. You have RBAC policies like roles, role binding, everything, administrative stuff, volume, storage, applications, network policies, quotas, everything is defined as a resource. Now, how do you extend the feature of Kubernetes is by exposing or adding more resources. Like, for example, a rollout will be a resource. You can run an analysis, automated analysis, run some experiments as in tests. And all of these are resources. And the way controllers work is they run the controller just like a deployment. It runs a controller in your cluster, and it listens or exposes certain additional resources, and we call them as CRDs. CRD stands for the custom resources. So you're creating custom resources. They work like these resources. They allow you to control or add code like the way you manage existing resources. And that's how this works. So if I look at CRDs or list the CRDs, I don't have any. And this is the time I'll bring in the Argo rollout as the controller. Now, do not confuse Argo rollouts with Argo CD. There are two different things. There are, in fact, multiple things with Argo. Argo has Argo CD, which is the one with UI and helps you set up automated deployments using the principles of GitOps. There is Argo rollouts, which is a controller like a deployment. There is Argo workflow, which is a kind of automation, workflow automation tool. There is Argo events. There is Argo image updater. So there are many different things with Argo beyond Argo CD and even beyond Argo rollouts that we're going to look at. So I will stick to only Argo rollout, which is a controller, which is going to give you these features. Like it gives you an ability to add a blue-green update strategy, or maybe canary releases. Traffic shifting with canary, you have to do that anyways, works with ingress controllers and so on. Now, I don't have any ingress controllers here. I'm just going to use a simple mechanism here where I'll just set up a Argo rollout. I will create or convert the deployment into the rollout configuration, add the strategy, which is a blue-green strategy, and then demonstrate how that works. So we'll keep it to that. Simple. Now, how do I implement Argo rollout is a controller, and I'll apply this code. Again, I just have the lab guide, which I typically use for my Kubernetes trainings and demos. And that's what I'm using here. So if you look at it, when I apply this, what all it creates is it creates the controller. It creates its own namespace. It creates its own controller through, let's say, its own deployment. It exposes certain CRDs, including rollouts, experiments, analysis, and whatnot. And at this point of time, I should be able to list those custom resources. You can see that. There's a resource called as rollout, experiment, analysis, and whatnot. And this is what Argo control is listening for. If you create a YAML object or a resource any which way and apply that in Kubernetes, it will be that controller. That controller runs as a pod. And it has created this namespace called as Argo rollouts. So if I look inside the Argo rollouts, I do see that controller running. And that would be listening for the rollout objects. It is talking to the API server, listening to the rollout objects. And then whatever, whenever I add a strategy called as blue-green, it will basically take an action based on that, right? And how do I then define my strategy is I can take the existing deployment file, vote-deploy that I have, and convert it into an Argo rollout. So I'll call it as rollout.yaml. And then again, this needs a bit of a familiarity with Kubernetes API resource and the spec. But if I want to convert this into an object like rollout, I'll have to start by defining that this is a rollout instead of a deployment. Again, if you're completely new, do not worry about it. You can ignore this part or try and understand at least the strategy part there, right? So I'll create the strategy where I'll say, okay, I'll change the API version because since I'm using a custom controller, it has its own configuration that I have to add like this. And then I will have to remove the strategy because strategy is replaced with blue-green strategy that the rollout supports. I will also just have a small number of pods, replicas, let's say just 5 pods that I want to roll out with. I keep everything else. I think there's only one property, template metadata name, that I'll have to remove. And then if I read Argo rollout documentation, this is where I find how do I use it, what kind of properties are supported. So if I want to use, let's say, rollout and want to define the deployment strategy, which is blue-green, what are the properties which are supported? And the advantage of using Kubernetes is no matter what kind of controllers that you use, the properties are written the same way. So once you get used to this, writing this code and understanding of it, your life gets simpler because you use the same platform and then you do multiple things. And that's what the future is going to look like, where you have Kubernetes and you have pipelines which will be written like this. There will be other objects, like you want to manage some cloud specification or cloud component. You will use an interface and another tool sitting on top of Kubernetes, another controller basically. But the interface to talk to Kubernetes and do anything will remain similar basically. That's the direction in which we are moving in the future. So it is important to understand how Kubernetes works. It is important to be able to write this spec, because if you can do this, you can do anything on top of Kubernetes really. And if you look at it, this is how the rollout specification would look like. So you'll see everything is almost similar to deployment, except for the strategy, where the strategy is going to be blue-green. And when you have blue-green, what are the things you have to define? You'll have to define things like, hey, blue-green deployment will happen like this. So there'll be a primary service. You'll have to create a secondary or a preview service. So you'll have to define the name of that. You'll also have to define the analysis if you want. You'll have to define, let's say, okay, you've created this new set of replicas, new version is running with this. Now you've tested it. After how long would you want to switch this to the new version as well? So you can define that configuration as well. And that's what I have here in terms of strategy, which I'm going to add and just help you understand. So this is what I add, where I say strategy is blue-green. Should it promote automatically or not? Or do you wait for a manual intervention to promote this to the new version after some time? So I'm going to say auto promote. After how long? After this has come up and you started testing it, how long do you want to wait for to switch this to the new version? That's this interval. And then what is my active service? What is my previous service? Again, this is the simplistic configuration I'm showing you, but you can add many different things like this. So we can define some analysis unit. You can define some, scale down second is, how long you wait to delete the previous parts. And there are many other configurations that you can define. And that's what this spec talks about, basically. Do you want to run any analysis? What do you want to do before running the analysis, after doing that, and so on and so forth? We'll not get into that too much right now. We'll keep it simple, just show you the blue-green with two different services, and that's it. So I've created that configuration. I'll just check if everything looks fine to me here. And then I'll delete the deployment and switch to Argo. But before that, I'll have to create a preview service as well. So I have a service which is already there. I'll have to create a preview service as well, which would look like this. Call it as vote-bg. So that's for blue-green. Essentially, I have two different services, like two different load balances pointing to it. The same that you see in this diagram. I have this is my primary, this is my preview. Now let me show you side by side so that you'll see that later as well. So this is my primary, this is my preview. I'll start auto refreshing both. Every 3 seconds, yes. Right now, both are pointing to V2, which is fine. Even before I proceed, I'll have to delete my deployment and start deploying things with my rollout controller. So right now it is being run by deployment. I'll have to switch to rollout. So I'll first delete everything that I created with deployment. This does not delete the file, but it will delete the deployment. Along with its replica sets, pods, everything is gone. I just have the service. Services can stay. It doesn't point to anything because there's nothing else there. And then at this time, I will apply my rollout. Again, I'll just start with V1. It'll be almost like deployment. When you look at it, you do see it has launched the pods. I just asked it to create 5, and it has done it via replica set. And then there is a rollout object now, which I can list as well using get rollouts like this. That's the one which is maintaining that. I can also install a plugin for displaying the status of rollouts. Just gonna go ahead and run this. they'll give me the Argo command. So Argo is a sub command which will be available with kubectl in case if I have that. So you can see that it's there. So I can see the Argo rollouts. And you have many commands with it. So Argo rollouts, I'll probably use Argo rollouts get. Or list. Yeah, so let's say we want to watch the status for the rollout status for an application called as vote. Yeah, it says healthy right now. I'll keep it possibly here. We'll watch it, what goes on. And you see the version 1 is running. I want to roll out the version 2, but I do not want to switch over, before it is completely available, tested. And unlike a deployment, which is going to show both the versions while the rollout happens, we will switch. So this is left-hand side is my primary service. This will switch only after the preview service has come up. You've tested. Let's assume that we're running some analysis there, automated analysis. And only after that is done, after 30 seconds, the primary service will switch to the new version. Until then, you'll keep on seeing version 1. That is the blue-green rollout. So it will keep on showing you the primary service until all of this is ready, and then you switch over to it. That's the idea. Let's trigger the rollout and see what's going on. How would I do that is the same way. So I will use just editing this, changing the version to v2, kubectl apply, should trigger the rollout. At this time, I should see the service updating as well. So I'll just show you that. Yeah, so there is a describe for that. All right. So what you're going to see is initially the vote BG, that's my preview service. That's the one which will have new endpoints. And then eventually this service will also switch over to those endpoints, right? That's when this release will complete basically. That's another way of checking this, what's going on and so on. So I'm rolling out this version. You see, vote BG just switched over to a new set of pods. You might have seen that clip. I will see it again. It has created a new set of pods, v2. Just now, you look at the age, just about a few seconds ago. And what BG is gonna maintaining that. So you see the rollout status for that is here. Okay, this probably doesn't make sense, this output. But at this time, you should see the service switched over to v2. This is the preview service, the right-hand side. V1 is not affected at all, right? It's still running with the old version of the pods. And at this time, you see this is blue-green. It said healthy there, and then it will switch over. So this is switched over actually after 30 seconds. So you see it switched over. And when it switched over, it would have been just a blip of a downtime, or you may not even notice it because we are refreshing after 3 seconds. So if it happened in between, you will not even notice that there was a downtime, right? So that's the advantage of having a blue-green, where you have a very minimal downtime. And then this is going to keep the previous set of pods for some time. They just got terminated. Again, I think it's 30-second gap interval. And let's try one more time to see how this works. Going from V2 to V3, V3 here again. Let's see if we have any other Argo rollout commands. Good. There's some seems to be some dashboard as well. All right, I'll try that later. I'm just trying to see if we can get any other command where we can get more of information about what's going on. Get details about rollouts and experiments. Let's see. Circle rollouts. Get. Rollout and or vote application. Let's see what this shows us. Yeah, okay, this is interesting. Yeah. All right, so this is showing us the name of the application. This is the strategy. How many are, this is, okay, does it show us while the rollout happens or not? We'll have a look. But we can definitely see new set of pods here, like new set of replicas. You're going to see this pointing to the next. So this will point to the next set of pods. And then eventually this will point to the same pods as well, right? And that's what happens. So the same service will start pointing to this, and then these will get deleted. Now we have switched here. Let's say the preview service will switch to the new set of pods, and then this will switch back and so on. That's why it is called as blue-green deployment. And let me trigger. All right, V3 is already there. We just have to apply. Start watching. You see new set of pods in the bottom already. Okay, this is good. So you see some revision and pods. This has switched over to a new set of pods. You do see something here. Okay, this is good. So you do see something here. There are two sets of pods. And you're going to obviously see this has gone to V3. This is still on V2. And then at some point of time, it's going to switch over there. So see currently there are 10. So do see something. So blue-green pauses because it is waiting for analysis. And then it's going to switch over. I think this is a better view. And it's gone to revision 3. This is revision 3. That's our preview service. You saw the preview thing here. Might have seen that. This is stable now. So stable version has gone to V3 as well. So stable version is gone to V3. At this point of time, this is switched over. And you do see the same versions here and here. Let's just try one more time to see what's going on. And we'll quickly switch over to here. So now you see V4. Preview is pointing to V4. Your stable is pointing to V3 still. That's what this says. And I think that's the right way of looking at it. So right view of looking at it. So this is V4 preview and active service cutover pending. It's going to wait for 30 seconds for that cutover, and then it will progress. right? And this is two different images. This is active, this is preview. Preview is gone to V4, this is V3. And then the stable will cut over to that. That's what is going to happen very soon. Everything is ready. You can see that already. This is probably the time it will run analysis, and now it has gone to V4. This will get deleted very soon. There's no service pointing to it, okay? There's no service pointing to it. Stable and everything. So this is the previous image, stable and active, both. This is marked as active now, and both are pointing to the same version now. And these set of pods will go away in a few seconds. So you see 8 pods right now, or 10 pods, and it'll switch back to 5. Just switch back to 5, and we've moved to that stable and active. It's no more preview. It is now marked as active service and then stable service. So it is pointing to both. So it's not pointing to the preview anymore, right? So that's what this means. And this is the blue-green deployment basically. And if you wanted to implement Canary, it would be more like 20% of the traffic will go to V4, and then wait, and then step-by-step increment that. So instead of 20%, send 30% and 40% and 50%. And then when you're satisfied with the results, Canary with increasing number of batches, you then switch over the primary to the preview one. All right, so that's about how this basically works, the blue-green deployment. And this is a demo, a quick demo of what is possible. There are many configurations, automated analysis, different strategies that you can implement with this. If you want to go beyond this, you have alternatives to this as well. So instead of Argo rollouts, you can use Flux plus Flagger. So if you look at the tool called as Flagger, I think Flagger supports even more deployment types. And here you can do A/B testing, canaries, blue-green. So it does support A/B testing as well. So Flagger works with a tool called as Flux. I have an entire course that I did for Linux Foundation on this topic of GitOps implementation with Flagger and Flux. It was mainly a course on GitOps with Flux CD. Flux CD is an alternative to, let's say, Argo. And it slightly has a more of a learning curve, but it is also a very interesting tool to know about, right? And let me just show you which course is that. It's also part of our membership platform here. And I think I need to remove this to show the courses. And that's refresh. Yeah, so this particular course, if you're a member already, you will probably have an access to this. And this talks about GitOps. And there is an entire section on Flagger. And this is about automated deployment initially. And then you set up, let's say, different types of releases and things like that. It's a very detailed course. So that's why I'm just going through the index right now. And you do see the Flagger, right? So blue-green deployment, Canary releases, how does that work? It's quite interesting. So I think I can just show you how Canary would work. This is again from the same course. Yeah, so this is the visualization that I created for that. So Canary works like this, where you have, let's say the traffic is going via something called as ingress controller. In this case, it's Nginx, which sits on top of service of sorts. And then let's say this is your primary. which is 100% traffic is going through that, through your, these pods. And then you set up Canary, where you have a similar thing, preview service, monitoring system, and then Flagger is watching for this monitoring data as well. And based on the analysis, it will decide whether to progress or not. And it does step by step. So if you, in case of Canary, you start with maybe 5% traffic here, 95% here. That's why it is called as a canary, because you're testing those clients just like the canary bird in coal mines, which is kept there just to detect any toxic gases. The canaries are very sensitive to that. And if there is a toxic gases which can harm humans as well, the canaries are the ones which are unfortunately do get affected first and die. But based on that, you save the human lives. So that's how the canaries are, right? And these are treated as canaries here. And then 5% traffic goes here, and then wait, analyze, and then increment by 10% and 15%. So increment, this is incrementing, this is decreasing. And you get to the point where you've run multiple steps and say, okay, now everything looks good, let's switch over. And that's the time when you switch over to, in this case, it's done in a slightly different way. In case of Argo, you have service pointing or switching to the new set of pods. In this case, you redeploy or kind of deploy new versions of the pod here and then delete these and so on. So there are different tools implemented differently, but the crux, the concepts remain similar. And this is how the blue-green deployment, this is how you can extend Kubernetes to implement blue-green releases using, let's say, Argo rollouts, right? Any questions right now for me? Anything, any questions, any comments or questions, anything? Yeah, Mahesh, is there a question? If in case you have a question, you can unmute and speak as well, by the way. I see a message from you. All right. You can type in your question as well. I'll take a few. And in the meanwhile, I think we have a question from YouTube as well. There is a question which says from Hamza, who asks, do we have to write all manifests, deployment, service mesh, PVC, and all type of manifests alone as DevOps engineer in real world? Well, yes, but you have shortcuts. I'll give you some shortcuts here. You will have to write the manifest. Someone has to write the manifest. Now, to make things better, one is you have shortcuts. Secondly, you have ChatGPT and AI. And we have an entire course on that, talking about, some of that talks about how to generate the code, like generating a manifest. And I think I demonstrated that at on our webinar 1, where we talked about AI, ChatGPT, how do we use it to leverage things in Kubernetes. And you also have shortcuts like these. If you want to generate the code, you don't have to write it from scratch all the time. So you can use something like this. So let's say I want to create a deployment spec. I can say kubectl, if I know the commands to do so, create a deployment whose name is vote with an image. Let's say this is my image, version 2, and then I'll say number of replicas is 7. And then instead of actually creating it, I'll say dry run. So it does not create actually, just does a dry run. And then I will just add one more switch which says -YAML. That's it. That's the magic. You get the deployment code. This is the scaffold, syntactically correct. Take this, copy it, and then do add your stuff on that. If you want something even better, that's when you can bring in, let's say, something like ChatGPT. We have prompts that I've shared earlier. And let's say you want to create Kubernetes manifest or even a Helm chart. That's possible. You can add the prompts, which will help you write the code with all the best practices, like let's say Kubernetes code here. Yeah, let me use this manifest and show you the magic. So you can just say, hey, I want to write the code I want to deploy a database, or I'll say I'll deploy a Postgres database, which runs on port 5432. That's it. And it will, since the prompts are there, it'll detect what kind of controller it will use, stateful set in this case, generated the code. And the good part about this is, since we have added the prompts with best practices, it will do the right thing, add the proper labeling, choose the right controller, stateful set in this case, give you all the configuration, detailed configuration, all the best practices like adding resources, using environment variables, using volumes whenever necessary, create the service for you. So add a network policy. Maybe you can just say, give me the RBAC policy for this, and then goes and does that for you. So this is even better and magical, right? So you can use, you'll have to write the code. Someone will have to, but you have a lot of techniques which can help you save that for you. Yeah, hope that answers it. Okay, Mahesh has a question due to some reason. Okay, so he's asking for recording. All right, so recordings will be available if you're a member. I will be adding recordings. I've not been doing so because there are a lot of changes which have been brought in to the platform. So I've been busy doing that. I'll just talk about that as well. So if you're a completely new member, or if you are attending this for the first time, if you're not a member already, definitely check out. In fact, all the members also should check out. We have a new platform now, redesigned, as in new theme rather. And we're gonna have a theme of where we're trying to make you into DevOps ninjas. That's the theme we start with. So that's why we do our challenges, hackathons will be called as dojos. The projects will be called as katas. So we'll align everything according to the theme. I'll create some levels based on that as well. And yeah, that's what we want to do. So we want to have you become a DevOps ninja who has a deep knowledge, who is a real master in the skill and the craft. And what are the things that will make you help you do that is what is here. The courses, the AI prompts, GPTs, dojos, the boot camps, the live sessions, mini degrees, what we're going to introduce as well. So some sort of a system where you can build your credentials as well, reputation. And then what are the capabilities you're going to be building? You have it here. How is here. And the membership levels are added as well. So you can, and the best part is this time we've converted everything into the yearly memberships. That becomes much more accessible, affordable to everyone. Just to show you, this will also show up the prices based on where you're at. If you're in India, you'll see the INR prices. If you're not in India, you'll see the prices accordingly, Stripe prices. And if you click on the price, it will get converted into your currency mostly. So it has become much more affordable now. And in fact, the gold membership that we have, we've converted into a yearly thing. The typical lifetime is 5-year thing. So this is a yearly thing. So this becomes more affordable, accessible, and this becomes like a proper typical subscription membership based platform. We've also, if you're a member, you would notice that, and when you log in, instead of going to the activity page like this, where you used to see just the activity, we now have a very feature-rich, information-rich dashboard for you. More like a learning dashboard where you see everything related to your work, what you're supposed to do. The courses that you've been working on will show up here. I just have multiple courses open. That's why I show this. So last course, your progress there, and you can just continue from here, right? So this dashboard is a new thing which we just launched today. So definitely check it out. Give me feedback if you like it, if what can be added to this, and so on and so forth. So all the community activity also shows up here. The forums, we're not using it actively, but let's see. I'm going to give it one more try and see how that goes. We're still using Discord along with it, but we'll see if we can use this better. The DevOps dojos, the way we will conduct the boot camps or the challenges would be, there'll be a group where you can participate. and all the activities related to that for that entire quarter, including all the recordings, everything will be shared through this only, right? And then we already have this recording will be available as part of the inner circle recordings that we already have. So if you are a member, you will have access to those recordings already, right? So that's the thing. And you can see the new menu has been redesigned. I'm going to start adding a lot more content to this. Now that this is almost done, from tomorrow onwards, I'm just focusing on the content, redoing the courses, along with some enhancements here. But a lot of content, a lot of new articles will show up here. And you'll get a lot of content out here that you can go through and consume and learn from, basically, like a topic of headless service in Kubernetes. How does that work? I've just added an article as a sample there. And this is all well integrated. Everything is in one place. And it's just an enhanced version of our existing platform where you have a proper dashboard. You already have also have a account management console where you can go and manage your membership on your own. If you have memberships, will show up here. You can renew, cancel. In fact, if you want, you can ask to your account to be deleted and all that. So everything is moving towards a self-service portal. So whatever questions you have or need help, it should all be, first of all, handy here. And beyond that, we'll keep on improving this particular platform. And if you are a completely new member, you can, at this point of time, start with, I would recommend the nerd membership that we have, the second level here. The first level is just to give you a glimpse of what we have. This gives you a lot of value, as in it gives you access to all the courses that we have, absolutely. And it's a great value that I can tell you. In fact, if I just want to show you the stack of value that we have, and I'm preparing another webinar for that. But just to show you the stack of value that goes as part of a nerd membership that we have here. It's amazing in terms of the content. And we already have, let's say, these are the 3 levels of memberships that we are launching. Geek, Nerd, and Ninja. Ninja is going to be the one with all the project certification, and there are additional things that we'll keep on adding, including the dojos and boot camps and all those stuff, right? So that gives you a lot of additional value. But if you look at the existing stack of and Nerd membership, it already has the courses. Let's say the coaching is already there, right? So that you're attending, including this webinar. I'll just sift through it very quickly. But what you're getting is all these courses, including, let's say, the AI assisted DevOps mastery that I just uploaded. I'm in process of uploading this. System engineering is the one I'm going to start redoing with video courses. Ultimate DevOps Bootcamp has already been there. We've run a few challenges around it as well. It's one of the most popular courses out there that I've created. And then I have everything, including Docker mastery. And these are the mastery courses, like in-depth mastery of each of this topic, including Docker, Kubernetes, AWS, Terraform, Ansible, all my courses from Linux Foundation that I did, which are available for us, our platform as well. And that includes the CI/CD mastery, very detailed course on CI/CD. Again, the same course is available with Linux Foundation as well. But you get much better value if you compare it, but you can check it for yourself, that is, right? Containers course is there, and this is slightly different, as in we have, in addition to Docker, Podman, Builda, and all those tools, there's a CI/CD component of it, and some advanced topics, including multi-stage Docker files and stuff. We have GitOps with Flux CD, just explain to you, a very detailed course on Flux. But I'm going to create another one in Argo, and that's what I would recommend, because Flux has a bit of a learning curve. So if you are leaning towards Flux, or your organization is, this is an amazing course. Otherwise, I'm going to build one for Argo. DevSecOps is another course which is very detailed, very nicely done. I spent a lot of time, a lot of efforts building this course. And it's a fantastic course, takes you through every single aspect of security, right from your component analysis to static analysis to dynamic analysis to compliance scans to container image scans, automated container Kubernetes runtime security, Kubernetes scans, so many things out there with DevSecOps. And this with additional courses, which I'm not planning to update really because these are like older topics for Puppet and Chef. OpenShift and Istio, I'll probably update at some point of time. And if you look at the value stack, it's an amazing value that you're getting with the membership already. And if you are already a member, like a silver or gold, just wait for a week or so, because we'll have a migration path for you, which will give you a pretty decent value to what you have purchased and what you will get with that migration. So hold your horses for a week or so. I'll get back to you with details. But if you are new and if you want to join, you should be able to do that directly out of the site, that is schoolofdevops.com. Right. That's that for this week. Anything else? So, all right. So Atul, seems like you getting an error. We'll try to debug this. So are you getting this again and again, or is it just happening one time, Atul? All right. So in case if you're getting this again, just post your, if possible, you can go to the support section here and we'll test it as you as a member as well. So in fact, I can do that right over here. I'm being an admin. So let me try to see this as you and your dashboard. And yes, I'll check this. So it's good that I'm able to recreate this. Since I'm able to recreate this, I should be able to fix it as well. And when I fix it, I should know. So I'll try this and fix it. Good for reporting this. If you see any other issues related to this platform, I've tested it with a few users, which did work. But I'll check this and what's going on, and we'll figure this out. But we are moving towards a much better platform with a content-rich platform as well, and a lot of new stuff which will enhance your experience and in general help you achieve your goals, faster and in a kind of a structured way that we are kind of building here. But that's about that. Anyone else? Any other question anyone has? All right, folks. So thank you very much for attending this webinar and about this, blue-green releases and more with Argo CD and Kubernetes and so on. And we're going to continue this journey. We're going to have 2 more webinars this month until like 21st of December, I say. And then we'll get started with the actual bootcamp stuff. So all these live sessions that we're doing on Thursdays, we'll run the bootcamps, or what we call as dojos, from the month of January. We're preparing towards that launch. And by the end of December, I'll have the structure for this ready, along with at least some content update for you, right? And of course, the updates to the platforms are on the way as well. So thank you. And I will see you next week in another live session where we'll take up another interesting topic and I'll demonstrate that to you. Thank you, and bye-bye. You have a great week ahead and weekend. Thank you.